Welcome back to all our listeners. It's that time of the week again, where we discuss all things FPL on the First 45 podcast, brought to you by Craig and Darren.
Hello, you're listening to the First 45 podcast, and today we've got a change in the lineup as Senior Darren has become a father a day earlier than we thought he might have done, which is, very much a round of applause there.
Congratulations, Daz, man. Proud father.
Yeah, he's become the proud father of two daughters, twin daughters, and we've had the news that kids are well and mum is well as well. So congratulations to Darren and his fiance and the two lovely twin daughters that have welcomed him into the world. So it gives us all a slightly better chance of doing better in FPL next season, I think.
Definitely. He will be distracted. The birth of my firstborn coincided with my worst ever rank in FPL, which I think was 177k. If you take out, of course, my first season where I actually started in February, so that is of course the worst, but I had a small point all there. But yeah, I've had a bit of a disaster when my firstborn was in town, and I mean, two for the price of one. He's in trouble. Big trouble.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, he's done his 4-a-side picks earlier on, and I think he made a massive calamity on WhatsApp whilst he was picking his team as well. But I think it's a sign of things to come there. But yeah, we've given him the night off tonight, which is it's a bit of a poor effort on his part. But we're only joking.
He's got, yeah, exactly. A couple of kids, couple of newborns, day old. No, get on with it. It'll be fine. It's FPL. Nothing comes in the way of FPL. Yeah, no, we crack on. We move on.
Yeah, we'll crack on. And Craig, perhaps you want to give us a run through on how your team's got on in the last game week?
Well, I think if we go through my team, it probably mirrors pretty much what happened with Darren anyway. I see we have some similar good news stories, bad news stories. I mean, at the end of the day, when it all comes down to it, Salah was probably the highlight, which isn't too much to shout about. 9 points, but we both actually captained him, so we ended up with 18 points there, which was great, as did some others. Highlights for us. I say us because I think he was the same again. Iheanacho with 12 points, absolutely brilliant. And we both had double Chelsea at the back, so Mendy and Rudiger, which we benefited benefited from handsomely with those points. So that was great. I rolled my transfers. I think Darren actually played 2 free transfers, and he brought in Greenwood and Maddison, so it didn't quite work out for him this week, unfortunately. But we both move, and we take a climb up the rankings. I had 57 points. Dazza had 55 points. My rank was 14k, and now is 12k, so up a little bit, which is good.
Nice. And
Dazza's was 23k, up to 21k. So yeah, good week from us. Not too bad. Well, we'll take it, and we now move into the kind of the fun times now, don't we? When we've got a double game week coming up, and we've got a blank game week coming up, but these are all potentials. Nothing's been confirmed by the Premier League. It looks like it's going to be a little bit of lastminute.com, what with the social media blackout across football tomorrow. So yeah, whether or not the Premier League actually announce it in time is probably unlikely. But it is looking good. I mean, Mr. Ben Crellin, our guru of the blanks and doubles, is saying that it's very likely that we'll see a double game week in 35 and a blank in 36. So perhaps we'll talk about that a little bit now, Joey?
Yeah, let's dive into some of these topics around that. Starting off with captaincy, really. Let's have a little look. So, I mean, do you actually look beyond Harry Kane for captaincy in game week 34? If not, is there anyone else you've got on your radar?
For me, some won't even own him, so I guess they perhaps might have to think about someone else there. I think if you don't own him, then Son is the obvious choice, because I suspect that if you don't own Kane, you probably own Son, and if you don't own either, then I think you need to bring one in. And the reason why I say that is because of the fixture run. And the fixture run is absolutely brilliant, really. I mean, we don't know what we're basically going to get out of Spurs at the moment with Ryan Mason in charge. They're out of the competitions. Are they just going to fade away? But there is still that chance of top 4. So I suspect they're going to really go for it. They're going to really try to get that top 4 position. And, Kane doesn't exactly know what's going to happen with his future in the summer. He doesn't know if he's definitely going to get that move away, so he's going to want to still try and fight for that Champions League spot because he could still be at Spurs next season. You never know. I don't think he will. I think he will take this as an opportunity to move to a bigger club like a Real Madrid or another Premier League club that's perhaps in the Champions League and doing better. But that said, I feel that they're still going to be up for it. And it's with shackles off, I think, at the moment. No Mourinho. Yes, great manager. Not really done it in the last few years, but the pedigree is there, and he would have had a real hold on exactly what they're doing tactically and things like that. Whereas, fingers crossed, Spurs now just go out there and just play a little bit like they're playing in the park, right? Playing amongst friends. Ryan Mason's obviously been part of the setup before. He's even played there with Gareth Bale, so he might see some more game time. So I think, you do need to bring in someone from Spurs, I think, this week, and then the likelihood is that you're going to captain them. So I guess to answer the question, I do see that there is room to captain someone outside of Kane this week because, again, his fitness is perhaps in question. We don't really know what Kane we're going to get. Is he going to be full fitness? Is he going to be around that 100% mark? Most likely not. I feel like he was probably rushed back into that final, which you would expect. It's a final. They haven't won anything for so many years. So, you want to have your talisman in the squad. And I'm sure he was, chomping at the bit to get involved. And we don't know what we're going to get out of him. So, I don't think it's as cut as dry as you have to go for Kane. And to be honest, if I didn't own Kane, and I didn't know Son, a bit more of an out there one for me is someone like Pereira at West Brom. If you owned him, his form is absolutely amazing. And so, if you are looking to climb the leagues, he's probably he's probably the man that you want to go to. Over the last 4 game weeks, no player has scored more points than Matheus Pereira at West Brom. He's averaging 10.5 points per game for the last 4. And look, Wolves didn't look great, did they, last week? So, I expect a return from Pereira. I think 6-7 points at least at home to Wolves. And I really like Fernandes as well. I think Fernandes is due, and Liverpool aren't looking that assured at the back. So I think Bruno will get something. His numbers have actually been pretty decent. The underlying stats are there for Fernandes. They might have dipped in some areas, but some stats are still there in terms of chances created and attempted assists. So I feel like Fernandes could also be amongst the points. So there's some options for captaincy for sure.
Yeah, indeed. Right, moving on. Obviously, one big highlight that we picked up on last game week was Chris Wood's hat trick. Probably come as a bit of a shock to most of us, but he's been
mind blowing
quite well
stuff
behind the scenes. But he's got good fixtures for the remainder of the season now. I mean, from your perspective, Craig, is he someone that you would firstly consider buying and bringing in now, or would you look at him in future seasons as well, based on what you've seen of him this season and what has perhaps been a tough season for him with other players like Barnes out in different parts, and J-Rod out in and out of the side. He seems to have kept them afloat, pretty single-handed this season in attack.
Yeah, he has, hasn't he? And the numbers are there, as you said. What is a surprise, or not a surprise, because he's done it for the previous few seasons, is the fact that he's then knocked on the door again for those double-digit goal involvements this season. He's, as you say, his delivery has been pretty consistent in the last few seasons, and he's always been getting around that kind of 130, 140 point mark, which is great for a player that's 6.5 million. But you've really got to catch the waves with Chris Wood. He's one of those ones that can be really frustrating to own. Each season he has long barren spells, and if we just look at this season alone in isolation, there's an example here where he's actually only scored 1 in his first 7, 1 in his next 5 after that, and then 1 in his next 6. So there's big spells there where he goes 6 games, 4 games and 5 games with literally no returns whatsoever. And that's 3 goals out of 18 games. So you do have to catch the waves, and I feel that he's not someone that you need to own from day one, but you just need to see when he hits a bit of form, when he gets 2 goals in 2 games, maybe that is the time to sort of jump on him, because when he has those spells where he goes 1 goal and then he has no goal involvements for the next 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 games in some instances here, that's where you might get the trigger, where you see he's got 2 goals in 2 games now. Maybe that's the time to jump on him. So there is definitely value there, but I don't think he's someone that you need to start with.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, on a side note there, I do wonder whether he is a player that will potentially be on the move in the summer if we have a a merry-go-round of strikers moving around the league, with Kane potentially on the move, Danny Ings potentially on the move. We might well see Chris Wood on the move at some point in the future. So it'd be very interesting to see if those numbers translate into next season. So moving on, we've got 4 teams with a game in hand who are guaranteed a double game week and no blank, which we touched upon earlier on in the pod. That's Aston Villa, Everton, Crystal Palace and Southampton. When do we start to consider players from these teams, and who's on your radar, Craig, from those 4 sides?
Yeah, I think you have to plan now if you have no further chips. I think you do need to start thinking about those players. It is advisable to have a few double game week players because big hauls can occur. We've seen, over all of the seasons, certainly that I have played, that we get, 10, 15 point hauls from some of the more standout picks. And for me, standouts would include Watkins from Aston Villa, Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin from Everton, and Zaha, perhaps an Eze from Crystal Palace, and maybe Ings from Southampton. So, yeah, I guess I had a little look at the numbers because I knew obviously you were going to throw this question out there. And, out of those 6 picks, I had a little look at some of the numbers. And over the last 8 game weeks, Watkins leads the way for FPL points per game, averaging a score of 4.56 points, which is closely followed by Ings, actually, with an average of 4.40 out of those 6 players. But it's worth noting that Watkins' numbers are even more impressive as he's actually played 9 games to Ings' 5. And of course, we know that it is harder to sustain solid numbers over a longer period of time in FPL or obviously in the Premier League. So actually, another thing is that it was very surprising to see that Calvert-Lewin is actually the bottom of the list of the 6, with an average FPL point score of just 2.67 points over that period of 8 game weeks. And in that time, he's actually played 6 games across those 8 game weeks. So that's not great numbers. That doesn't fill me with an awful lot of confidence. It looks like he's going for a bit of a blank spell at the moment. So I would probably look elsewhere in Everton's ranks. And actually, interestingly enough, Richarlison may well be the person that you need to look to from the Everton ranks, because when I looked at the numbers from an expected FPL points per game perspective, which actually factors in things like shots on target, attempted assists, big chances created, all those wonderful FPL stats, and then it provides you with a number of points that you would expect them to have got in that game. He's actually top. He's top of all those 6 players, so above Watkins and Ings. And of course, DCL's performance isn't great, so he's more at the bottom there. But yeah, Richarlison's at the top with an expected FPL score of 4.39 per game. So he's actually currently underperforming, having only accrued an average of exactly 4 a game from 8 games over that period. So he's one to watch, and I think he could help you leap up the ranks in the double game week and would definitely be someone I'd consider bringing in.
Yeah, just a little side note there for anyone who's not been following the news as well. Danny Ings is a very big unknown for the remainder of the season now. Picked up on a bit of news earlier today saying that he has no timescale to return back into the team following a current injury. So you might not see him back this season. It might also be a bit of gamesmanship and he might be coming back in a few weeks. But I know they were talking along the lines of Oreo Romeo, who was ruled out for the rest of the season, who's actually started to return to training. Danny Ings isn't even in training at the moment. So I would perhaps put an advisory on selecting him for some of your upcoming game weeks, because he might not even feature now for the Saints. And just very quickly before we move on as well, I can see some of Darren's notes in here. So we don't have the context of some of his thinking behind some of these, but also thinking about Luca Dean for Everton. I can see he was also thinking about Zaha from Palace. Another Saints player he picked out was Kyle Walker-Peters. And similarly, is Grealish going to make a return? I know I've been thinking about him from a draft perspective, but he's just not returning at the moment. So he's wallowing on my bench in that format. And same with Martinez from a goalkeeping perspective. But I can see that Darren's a little bit concerned about some of those fixtures with Manchester United and Everton, Palace and Tottenham coming up, and might not be the best. But I think, as you've said there, Craig, that Watkins has actually performed quite well, even against some tough fixtures as well. So he looks like a solid choice.
Yeah, he does. Absolutely.
Craig, let's touch upon the fact that you've still got your free hit.
Yeah.
And Darren probably wants to know this as well when he's plotting to try and catch you back up in the mini league. Is it the double game week in 35 or the blank in 36, based on Ben Krellin's predictions, that you're going to be looking to target with that chip? And how will it dictate your transfers until the free hit is played?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, for anyone that's considering how to, well, not only navigate these game weeks without a free hit, but perhaps if you have got the free hit, then, maybe there's some gambits in here. I mean, it's keeping me up at night at the moment, because if we do have a double in 35, then of course I will use the free hit then, I believe, is the best time to use it, because I should be able to navigate the blank game week afterwards. But of course, I do have, at the moment, I believe 5 players that could potentially blank within that game week, which actually also includes my goalkeeper, Mendy, which is a problem because I've got Forster as the backup, who, of course, has potentially lost his place. So if the double does go ahead, then that very likely means that Arsenal, Chelsea, Leicester and United will be the ones that have the blank game week afterwards. As I said, I have 5 from those teams at the moment, and I currently plan to use it in the 35, of course, to try and maximise the double game week potential. And from those clubs, I mean, the players that I actually have, who are the 5? Well, it's Mendy in goal as a reference. Then I've got Rudiger in defence, Holding as well, a bit more of a bench fodder there, but of course, still someone that would block, me potentially having 11 players. And Iheanacho and Bruno as well. So they're 5 players. Now, of course, if you take the goalkeeper out of consideration, then I've got 4 outfielders there. If I don't rectify that now, I will only have, obviously, that 1 transfer after the free hit, as we all know. So if you play the free hit, then you are only given 1 transfer after the free hit. Even if you carry two free transfers prior to playing the free hit, they obviously get wiped out and you go back down to 1. So I do need to use it. I will have to almost certainly use both my 2 free transfers this week. So yeah, it's really got me thinking, do I address the goalkeeper situation now, or should I just wait for that game week to maybe bring someone in that second spot, to perhaps replace Forster, so at least I can keep hold of Mendy if I feel like I want to play him in the last few games. But again, Chelsea's fixtures aren't that great from sort of 36 to 38, so do I make a move now and try and bring in an asset like a Meslier or someone like that who has good fixtures in 36 to 38? But I'd rather not have to waste a transfer on someone like Mendy this game week, who again could play against Fulham at home and get your 6-7 points. Of course, there is the sort of rotation there. Could they actually play Kepa in goal on Saturday? Tuchel's the type of manager that likes to basically do a dress rehearsal behind a big game. So I think we saw it against West Ham. The side that played against West Ham was actually the side that they used against Real Madrid, because it gets them in the rhythm and flow. But do you really need to play the goalkeeper? Do they need rhythm? Probably not. Maybe, of course, passing around the back and being good with your feet. Yeah, I understand. But, maybe we could see Mendy being dropped. So I've really got a lot of thinking to do at the moment. I'm not really too sure how to play that. Bruno and Iheanacho, when I started making these notes earlier, I was referencing that they wouldn't go anywhere. But actually, I'm thinking now a little bit more about Bruno. Maybe he is the one to move out. Because like I said, I don't really want to lose Mendy or Rudiger. But I think it has to come from Mendy, Rudiger or Holding, which means, that I get to keep Bruno and Iheanacho, because I do fancy Bruno to get something this week against Liverpool. And Iheanacho's, the most formed player at the moment, so he's going nowhere. So yeah, I could do Meslier and Dallas in for Mendy and Rudiger, but I'd rather not do that, as I quite like the plum fixtures for Chelsea this week, and they actually are top of the pile in terms of expected clean sheets and defensive stats. They are head and shoulders above everyone else. So if you do have those players, it's probably not wise to move them on, especially when they're playing at home to Fulham, who of course do struggle to score goals. But my original plan, before all of this kind of consideration about the blank game week and the double game week, I actually had the money to upgrade Welbeck to Bamford, who I wanted to do, because I'm not too sure about playing Jota away at United. I think I'd rather play Bamford ahead of Welbeck, who obviously I already own, even though he is at home to Leeds. Leeds, of course, have improved recently with regards to their defensive numbers, and I think Bamford's due. So I would like to move that way, because again, Bamford has good fixtures. So someone I would actually like to bring in. So yeah, I've got a bit of a headache at the moment. Not really too sure, what to do. And if I did do something like, Bamford in, then of course that doesn't leave me with enough money to do Rudiger to Dallas, should we say. So that could be my moves, right? I'm then 0.2 short. So there's just so much thinking to do. And going back to my Bruno point, the alternative here is that I actually could take out Bruno for Bale. Bruno's not really been doing it. He has got the fixture against Liverpool, which could be tough. I see it being 0-0, 1-1, so not a huge haul for Bruno. And I actually think that Ryan Mason's going to play Bale for the rest of the season. And as we know, their fixtures are decent. That would give me some nice cash in the bank to play around with to maybe upgrade that second goalkeeper in game week 35. And it would also give me Bale, Son and Kane with some very plum fixtures to come, right? The free hit would be in 35, so I wouldn't obviously play them, or I'd have one or two of them away to Leeds if I did choose to keep hold of them. But I would then have, Sheffield United at home in 34, Wolves at home in 36, and Aston Villa at home in 37, followed obviously by game week 38 where they're away at Leicester, which of course I could always lose one of them with a free transfer anyway. So it would be proper gong-ho out on Spurs. But, those three home fixtures, I see goals, even against the likes of Aston Villa, but certainly against Wolves and Sheffield United. So that could be a move.
Yeah. Yeah, lots for you to be considering there.
A lot, mate. Real lot. Yeah, absolute headache.
Yeah. Right, let's move on to community questions. So these are fired at us on Twitter at our account, which is First45Pod. So we got a few here. I think we're just going to whiz through these, Craig. Give your thoughts straight from the hip. So the first one is from Stu Mather, who's at Stu Mather. Is it worth a 1 week punt on Sterling? Thinking of going Bruno to Sterling, then Salah next week. You got any thoughts about that one? I mean, Sterling's not a name that's actually cropped up in our conversations so far today.
I like it though. I like where the headspace is at there, because of course Sterling didn't start the Champions League fixture, right? So you're almost guaranteed that he's starting this one. I mean, away at Palace, they're certainly not the Palace that we've seen, of old, but they did put up a stern test.
Yeah, they're no pushovers at the moment.
No, they're not, are they? That's the thing. They did put in a good showing against Leicester, and they could have perhaps snuck away with a draw had it not been for Iheanacho's brilliance. That absolute sublime goal. They could have ended up getting a 1-1 there. So, yeah, I don't know. I probably wouldn't do that. If I was going to make the punt, Stu, I'd probably do the Bruno to Bale move, as I've just referenced, if I'm honest.
So, yeah, next question we've got is from FPL Tinker, who's asked something similar there. So, about taking the free transfer this week or not, or to take a risk. So, hopefully, that insight on the last question gives you some insight on what Craig's thinking on that one. So, next one we've got is from Element. It's at Element M. They have 5 players, or actually 6 with Phillips for Liverpool versus United. They got Bruno, Shaw, TAA, Jota and Greenwood, and they've got a bit of a benching dilemma. Who would you consider benching out of those, Craig? I'm assuming that if you had to bench maybe one of them or two of them.
Mm-hmm. If it's one, for sure it's Jota, because I'm actually looking to perhaps bring in Bamford and bench Jota myself. Again, not 100% sure on that Bamford move, because I actually might have to be... my hand might be forced in terms of playing those transfers elsewhere to basically give me a squad for game week 36. But Jota, I would say, would be my choice to bench. I don't own Shaw. I obviously own Alexander-Arnold and Bruno, so they're definitely playing for me. I don't own Shaw, but his numbers are absolutely through the roof at the moment. His creative side is really coming through because he's taking corners. So, his attempted assists, successful crosses, etc. are the highest out of any defender, and they're actually up there with some of the best midfielders. In fact, he's right up there. So, sure, for me, I'd just play him for hopefully the attacking returns that he could potentially get out of this game. Because, as I said, Liverpool aren't the most solid outfit at the back at the moment. And then, I'd probably play Greenwood. I quite like it, as I'm referring to there. I don't think Liverpool are that solid at the moment. Trent Alexander-Arnold, again, is someone that you kind of put in your team hoping that he's going to get some form of attacking returns. So for me, it's an easy Jota bench. And then, secondly, I might consider benching Greenwood just in case he's, rotated out and they switch it up and bring a Cavani in or something like that. But Jota, Greenwood would be my 2 in that order.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, as an owner of Bruno, Trent, Jota and Greenwood myself, if I had Shaw, I think I'd be playing him over Greenwood and Jota for sure.
Yeah.
I think that game's possibly also got 0-0 written all over it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, having two defenders in there is probably not a bad thing. But yeah, I think the returns of Shaw recently are too good to put on your bench, in my humble opinion, for what it's worth. So moving on to the next question is from Joseph Melvin. That's Joseph with a Z, Jozef Melvin. They've asked, just having a tough time deciding between Pickford, Guita and Meslier to fill the second goalkeeping spot, as they need to bench boost in 35. And in 36, Mendy isn't playing. I know there's a bit more in this question here. Don't need them in after 36. Everton, Leeds have improved defensively, but have tougher fixtures. And Guita has the easiest, but it's Palace. I mean, what would be your second spot, and who would it be going to there, Craig, out of those three?
I think it is actually a bit of a toss-up out of the Pickford and Meslier, I have to say. They have improved defensively. I actually do feel like they've got good fixtures. So yeah, if you're comparing them against Palace, yes, of course, their fixtures on paper might look a little bit better. But in terms of a defensive outfit and an outfit in general within the league, they are, without a shadow of a doubt, behind the aforementioned there in Everton and Leeds. And I think Leeds are right up there. So I think, Meslier at 4.7 million offers a lot of value. He's the cheapest asset out of all of those, I believe. So yeah, I probably would stick with Meslier, I think, and then Pickford is just behind. But he's close behind because he's playing Villa at home this game week, and then of course they have the double game week where they play West Ham away and Aston Villa away. But then I actually look at 36 and 37 for, say, a second goalkeeper like Pickford, and they're at home to Sheffield United and Wolves, and I don't see too many goals coming in those games, so there could be the potential for one, maybe even two clean sheets there. So the Pickford pick is right up there. Of course, they've got Man City on the last game of the season, whereas Leeds actually are at home to West Bromwich Albion. So maybe Meslier just is ahead of Pickford in the pecking order for a suggestion there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as well, if you're thinking about game week 35 for the double and you're going to play your bench booster, Everton might be your pick, but again, it's whether you want to consume that extra budget just on that double, and then you're stuck with a goalkeeper you might not be playing, depending on who you've got for your first pick. So yeah, I think if you're looking at the long haul there, as you said, it might be a case of edging towards Leeds. Right, and then moving on, our last question is from Kalen. So that's at Kalen Bahari _2. Really don't know who to transfer this week, as I don't want to leave my team as it is, causing the second free transfer to be wasted. Should it just be Forster out for a 3.9, or do you have an alternative suggestion?
I guess, just to, and again, hopefully not to patronise Kalen in any way, but just make sure you're looking at that 36 and ensure that you don't have within that 36 too many potential blank game week players. And again, just to remind you of who those teams could be, we're looking at Arsenal, Chelsea, Leicester, Man United. So, of course, if you do have 4 or 5 assets across Arsenal, Chelsea, Leicester and Man United, then, that transfer can definitely be used to good advantage now to get rid of one of those players, because otherwise you're going to have a bit of a headache going into 36, potentially, with maybe only 2 transfers and then, 2 or 3 moves that you needed to make. So if you of course, you aren't in that position, then yeah, sure, maybe try and free up some budget if you can. The sake of 0.1 is not really going to help too much. So just maybe look at what is happening in maybe the game weeks coming up. Like I said, Spurs fixtures are very good, Leeds fixtures are very good, so maybe look at maybe moving an asset around, even if it is a Jota or a Bruno or someone like that, to a Spurs asset or a Leeds asset. I think that would be my advice, is try and look a little bit down the line, and I'm sure you can put those transfers to good use.
Okay, so moving on, we've got 4 aside, and looking at the standings, Darren's lead is beginning to dwindle a little bit there. So we'll come to that in just a second. But essentially, this is our First 45 podcast charity competition. Darren and Craig are taking each other on each week, and the loser is going to be paying £100 to Mind Charity at the end of the season. And we're taking on the community each week. So if the community end the season beating Darren and Craig, they're going to be giving over an extra £50 each to charity, which is superb. And in terms of the current standings, Darren had a bit of a slow week last week, only 10 points. So he is in the lead with 285. The FPL community is only 9 points behind now at 276.
Close.
And only 1 point behind that is Craig. So you've managed to pull back quite well there. You're only 10 points behind now.
Yeah,
already.
it was 24, wasn't it, a few weeks back? So I think I've pulled back 7 points last week, 7 points the week before that. So yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed this can be.
You're definitely on an
week.
FPL roll at the moment, for sure. So this week we have got Ed from FF Fest. So his Twitter account is at FFFestEd. So it looks like 3 Fs. It looks like fested. And Ed is part of a group which is at FF_Fest. And that is around Fantasy Football Fest. It's going to be a new festival gathering of fantasy football, which is going to coincide with the launch of the Premier League season next year. So I think Ed's going to talk about that in his segment in a second. Feel free to go and take a look at it at your leisure. But let's listen to Ed's team now and get some reaction to it.
Hello, this is Ed at FFFestEd on Twitter, and I'm ecstatic to be taking on Craig and Darren for Game Week 33 in the Charity Four-a-Side competition. And I'm representing, I've been told, the community, which is great. So, right, interesting fact. I've been told to say an interesting fact no one knows about me. I haven't got any that no one knows about me, but a strange one is I don't sweat from my armpits. Now, that could be seen as a blessing or a curse. The blessing is I don't sweat from my armpits. So when I lift my arms, in public situations, there's no dark mark there. Great. However, I do sweat profusely from my forehead, so it all seems to bypass the armpits and go through my face, which creates issues of its own, as I'm sure you can imagine. My picks this week, in goal, Sam Johnston for West Brom. Why? They're playing Wolves, who've been lacklustre this season. And Sam Allardyce, I love him. He gets far too much stick. I bet you they keep a clean sheet against Wolves. If Sam Allardyce took over a month earlier at West Brom, they'd be staying up, in my opinion. In defence, I'm going for Marcus Alonso. Why? Because it's Marcus Alonso, and he's probably going to play. They're playing Fulham at home. He didn't play in the Champions League. Ben Chilwell will get a rest. I think Alonso will probably get 6 or 7 goals and maybe 4 or 5 assists. In midfield, I'm going for Alan Saint-Maximin, the greatest talent in Premier League history. I'm a Newcastle fan, by the way. He is going to run riot against Arsenal, probably because he wants to win a move to Arsenal. And he's probably going to get maybe a hat-trick. Maybe 4. So one of those, I thought I'd let you know now. Up front, again, I'm a Newcastle fan. I'm going for Callum Wilson. Why? Because he is quality. If he could have stayed fit his whole career, he would be at a top 4 club, in my opinion. It's just he always gets injured. So that's it. Sam Johnston, Marcus Alonso, Alan Saint-Maximin, Callum Wilson. That works out as something like 21 million. What would I spend the extra 4 million on? I'd give Craig and Darren a bit of... that's spare change for me. So I'd chuck Craig and Darren a bit of money, I suppose, help them out. And then I spend the rest on Fantasy Football Fest tickets. Follow us at FF_Fest at our first show with Mark Southern's Gianni Buttici on the team. Fantasy Football Scout, Fantasy Football Hub, Fantasy Football Fix. August the 13th. Ticket info coming soon.
Oh, very interesting picks there. Very interesting
picks
it's a
bit
from Ed. Surprised at that.
Leaning heavily towards his
beloved Newcastle.
His beloved Newcastle.
He's gone for the double bubble.
Yeah.
St. Max and Cal. All out attack. Newcastle. That surprises
Some would
me.
say fruity.
Yeah, that is fruity. It's definitely not template tempo as we've had in the past, is it? This is... we're looking like we're going to have some very different teams here. They are actually at home to Arsenal. So, yeah, he's gone for it. I like it. Why not? You never know. Stranger things have happened. Remember the 4-4 with Arsenal, Newcastle. Who knows? Can that be repeated?
And especially in the context of this week with Darren picking his team, essentially from the hospital room.
On WhatsApp, wasn't it? So we're not going to give the listeners any more torture in their ears of us deliberating over who to pick and doing a draft here. We actually did it in WhatsApp, and it was actually hilarious because Darren picked a defender. He went with Alonso, and then 10 minutes or so went by. We sort of chased him a little bit, which is definitely rude from our part because he's got his hands tied. And he fired back in his second pick, which was Laporte. So he did 2 defenders. So as he said, quote, Darren, heads gone. So yeah, very much heads gone.
Yeah.
his head is away with the fairies at the moment. He is not focusing on FPL. We've got his work cut out with the birth of his twins. So I guess we'll just dive into it, shall we, Joey? Should we let the listeners know our picks?
Yeah, perhaps if you want to start with yours and then I can tell you.
Yeah, then you go to Daz's. But look, we did a draft. I ended up with Hugo Lloris in goal at home to Sheffield United. I don't think anything more needs to be said there. Hopefully there is a clean sheet on the cards. Sheffield United have scored the least amount of goals in the league this season. Fingers crossed something can come of that for me. I've then gone for Dallas himself, the main man. I've had him for a long part of this season. I don't own him at the moment. I want to bring him back. He's been fantastic value. 7 goals this season and a hatful of assists as well to go with that. So a real revelation. I've got him in. Hopefully he can do something against Brighton. I've then got Mateus Pereira. I talked him up a little bit earlier on the pod. If I did own him, I would consider captaining him this week. I'm not joking. I would do it. I'm thinking about it. I can't really bring him in. I can't fit him into my team, but I see something from Pereira. He's absolutely on form, averaging 10.5 points the last 4 games. I would consider putting the armband on him at home to Wolves. Fingers crossed he can deliver me some goods for my 4-a-side picks. And then finally, I've got Iheanacho away at Southampton. We all know what happened in this fixture last season. The away game at Saints on a Friday. I don't need to be reminded, nor does Joe. Darren doesn't want to hear it, as we're all beloved Southampton fans. But yeah, I think there's going to be a few goals in this one for Leicester. I think Southampton are all at sorts at the moment, and Iheanacho is literally the form man. So, yeah, they were my draft picks. I managed to obviously get those over Darren. That's how it works for anyone new listening in. We do a draft, so I'm still behind Darren, so I get first pick. So, I basically got the first pick of all of those positions.
Yep, so looking at Darren's team, he started off with a double at the back, so he's gone for Mendy and Alonso from Chelsea in defence, which will either be boom or bust for him, I'm sure. And then moving into midfield, he's gone for Jesse Lingard of West Ham. And in attack, he has gone for Bamford of Leeds. So
yeah, nice.
Quite a good, strong side there, but I think definitely the draft-like picks make it quite difficult for you guys because obviously there are, in previous weeks have been standout picks, like perhaps Iheanacho this week, and only one of you can claim each player there. So
yes.
Hopefully this week with Iheanacho, Craig, you'll be...
Fingers crossed, mate. 10 points in it. I could really pull it back. But again, we know stranger things happen in FPL and you just never know. And, Dazza could see, something happening with the Chelsea defence. And Alonso pick is nice, particularly as he missed out through the week. He's certain to play. And we know what Alonso can do. He could end up with a sort of 15-plus point haul there. So
nice one. Well, on that note, look forward to seeing how those players get on. I'm really hoping... the FPL community pull through now on that note.
Yeah, same for me really. Even though it will come out of my pocket, it's all good. It's all good cause. I'm up for it. Go on, community. Yeah. Go on, Ed.
Yeah.
St. Max and Cal. Let's go.
As always, don't forget to let us know your thoughts on Twitter on our handle at First45Pod. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on your podcast platform of choice. And as always, have a great week of FPL and looking forward to talking again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot. Enjoy your FPL weeks. Boom.